you might say, you might say after what we've done the first quarter of 2022 here, focusing on predictability, improving predictability, talking an awful lot about various ways of estimation and so on. And so tonight we are going to present and we are going to also, this is in a way the first step of trying to get out with a number of people to get their feedback on what we are doing. So I hope you see my screen. That's okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Zoom occasionally confuses you of what it actually does. So Cool Estimation is an application for estimation, and we're going to present that to you and to as the first group really to have an invitation to get involved. Should you so desire, if we can persuade you to it. But to begin with, we'll just recap a few things and then get on with it. So first of all, Jakob is here. He's one of our key developers and partner in crime here. So I've secured some backup from people who actually know what they're talking about technically. So that should be fine. And we will try and split it between ourselves. The agenda for tonight is getting started, reviewing the case for estimation, the challenges, and what we call team power estimation. And then we're looking at the application. Why have we done it? What is it? What does it do? We'll try it out in a moment, and then end up with the invitation. The icebreaker is simply to try and ask those who are here now, what is your burning question right now? What is it? Just to focus on it could be around this meeting, it could be around something else, but what is your burning question right now? What's at the top of your list of important questions? If anybody would volunteer and a statement here, just think about it.
I have a statement if
Yes.
I can start. My burning question, it is what I read in the email from you, that it could be used to estimate impact. And I have, just today, I have a course with some researchers who are very curious about to formulate success criteria that are maybe not so easy to formulate, because they say a lot of impact is qualitative and not quantitative. So can we use this cool estimation for estimating and formulate qualitative impact?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting input. Yes. Anybody else? Yeah, Jakob.
I suppose I have a couple of questions. One is what you're looking for to contribute to a team from a standpoint of skills. Is it a sales force? Is it ambassadors? Is it an architect for the system? Is it input to the content on one hand? So what is it that you're looking for, the qualities of the people you wish to attract? The other is the quality of the team that you're asking whoever would volunteer to join, from the standpoint of, does this mean that I will become an accessory to somebody else's hobby project? Or will I actually have an impact on the direction of the business model, the product, and so on and so forth? Will I be met with not invented here? If I have an idea, and stuff like that. So these are pretty existential questions in the life of a participant in somebody else's project.
Yep. Very good. Other things? Well, that's fine. We've just focused for a moment on the task at hand. And my burning question, if I take away the very top one, which is about what's going on in the world and what's happening next in Ukraine, which is very hard for me to not think about. I'm so old that I remember the Cuba crisis back in the day, where everybody thought that now the lid is going to blow off everything, and here we are again, 60 years later. Scary. But my top of my burning question is, can we get out and communicate with the people who would be interested in this? Can we reach the right group of people also? So let's move on. Of course, this is only going to be for an hour, and so there's a limit to detail. But of course, this is only the beginning of it. We'll move on, and we'll just look at the case for estimation, which is something we have talked about before, but just very quickly go through: do we really need it? Occasionally, we would come across arguments and say, no, we don't need it, because the world is, it could be different approaches to it. Some of them are valid, like Balas held a session for us recently talking about the non-estimation principle and how you can derive it, your predictions more or less from experience in another way. And that's certainly a valid approach in the right domains. We tend to claim that in real life we do need to estimate, because we always have limited resources, and therefore we, as people who either develop products or whatever we do, we have to decide on, if we are in a position of making these decisions, how do we spend our resources, how do we get the most value out of it. So the idea is to get the most value out of your efforts, and for that, since the future is not here, we have to be able to estimate. The world is increasingly complex. Everybody talks about that these days. We certainly do, but we have to do something anyway. We can't wait until we have all the facts on the table. We only have bits and pieces of the puzzle, and can we do something to improve the predictability even in this complex world? And the other part of arguing for estimation is that which might be considered a side effect of estimation, but whenever I teach people about using planning poker, for example, is I always say that, yeah, it's interesting to get a number out of it, but it's certainly perhaps even more interesting that we actually get people to talk together and increase their common understanding of what this is all about. So this is a way of, so doing estimation together is a part of sense making sense of the job at hand. And then to improve our judgment and prioritization, that with better estimates, we prepare the soil for better decisions. And so, summa summarum, we believe that there is a good case for spending time and resource on developing skills for estimations, and developing skills, but also tools that help and support that. The challenges is, and in a couple of previous webinars, we've run little psychological experiments that actually completely not proved, but supported common paradigms or common expectations of what happens when people estimate. There are cognitive biases at work. There is noise in estimation. The graph at the top right is where we asked people to come up with numbers of when people make a plan for finishing a piece of work, and they say, we will be 50% done at this time. How much is actually done? Typically. And the same with 75% and 99%. And the thing is that it is horrendously much more negative than people believe. So when we estimate like that, when we tend to believe people's plans, and they tend to be totally unreliable. If people say 50%, they in fact normally only 14% finished. When they say 75, they're 19. When they say 99%, they're 48% finished on average. And these are scary numbers. And you can also see there's a huge variation. There's noise in people's judgment. It's not that people have the same opinion and judgment about it. It varies an awful lot. And down below, we had an experiment of estimating marbles in jars. And there are several things we could derive from that, but certainly there is cognitive biases. There was the case of anchoring, when once you've looked at the small jar, you failed, or people failed, to adjust enough for the large jar. They underestimated how much was in the large jar. There was also an enormous spread of what people thought about it. So even on relatively simple things like this, you get an enormous spread in judgment. So cognitive biases and noise are really, really huge problems for any kind of reliability of estimations. You can read Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize winner, who has elaborated on this to his heart's content, and you can get even more depressed than from listening to me about how bad it is. Now, the good news is you can do something about it. The bad news is it's not for free. You can develop psychological safety so that when people are suspicious of anything, they actually speak up. And psychological safety is the basis for that estimating in a team will work. We are arguing the case that one of the ways you can remedy these or counter these challenges is that you involve a team in the estimation. You don't rely on individuals. We are notoriously unreliable as individuals. But whenever a team is involved, you need psychological safety in that team. Otherwise, people won't speak up, or they will only come forward with what you could call politically correct judgments, because they don't feel they can be honest about it. When there's fear in an organization, the numbers are cooked, said old Deming. Then, actually, there's also another problem that is inattention, is that, okay, so we should estimate something, but we maybe don't really pay attention to it. It's just an estimate, and we sort of can be very casual about it. But if you're in a team, you might actually feel this slightly stronger. There's a certain sense of urgency, because I'm sat here with my buddies and we need to come up with something. And then finally, the last couple of years with the corona has definitely taught us that it's an even harder job to do this online. And one of the really hard things is to develop this trust that is the basis of psychological safety if you only meet people online. And that's something we hope to work a lot on in the future. But from another perspective, is to come up with ways and practices that support the development of trust. That's not an IT problem, but that's a human problem. So when what we've called team power estimation is a family of estimations, ways of estimation that revolve around working in a team. And sort of the archetypal one is the well-known planning poker, the principles of planning poker. And what happens here is that we have a team involved. When a team is involved, we typically see that they balance each other's cognitive biases. So we reduce the effect of cognitive biases and also of noise, because there's a sort of averaging going on that is taking out some of the noise that individuals tend to have. And also in attendance, that we concentrate on it, because we're here together with my buddies, Jacob and Paul and Christian and so on, and I can't just hang around, not do anything. I better wake up and get on with it. So what we talk about is some estimation methods. A certain class of them focus around a meeting. That is like estimation poker. or planning poker. So we are all together in a meeting, physically or online. We often use relative estimation. We compare to reference items, either for cost, effort, value, or complexity, or other things we estimate. And relative estimation, we're much better at that than we are in absolutes. We can compare things. Apparently, our brain is hardwired for that. So what do we do in this meeting? We discuss, we estimate in an unanchored way individually. We argue the cases, the extremes. We redo the estimate. We triangulate, compare to what we've done earlier, and potentially we redo the cycle. So that's estimating in the meeting. That's a class of estimations where similar to estimation poker, or whatever it is you estimate. And that's what we're going to talk about here, because that's what the cool estimation tool helps you with in its current version. Then there's magic estimation, which is sort of the other way around in parallel instead of serially. All the possible options for judgment are laid out on a table. For example, all the estimation cards, the values that we can assign. And then we take the items, the stories, the product backlog items, the things we need to estimate, and we put them on top of these judgment cards. And we do that in parallel. And when all items are out on the table, the team can move the items around and discuss. And we can see if they keep moving around, then probably we need more attention, and people do not agree. But those that more or less stay fixed on the table, that's probably what the team thinks. And you can use this for value and for effort and everything else. And you also have voting. That is like a third thing, where you can see everything that we're voting about. You can you vote with dot voting. We have poker chips or monopoly money, and you try to assign, for example, a value. All the potential items that you're estimating, you assign a value to. So that's what is this kind of estimation, and what is cool estimation then, and what value does it bring? Well, it's a team for groups, for teams. It's a team that they work in an online fashion. Product backlog items, stories, we call them stories, and the tool supports you estimate effort the traditional way, like estimation or planning poker. Story points, you can also consider them absolute units if you want to. We support estimating costs, amount of money that the team expects to be spent on the story. So in some cases, effort is not everything. There's also money to be paid. Estimate the value, something that we are particularly keen on to talk to people that should spend more effort on estimating value, talk to the stakeholders, make sure that what we build is actually what the stakeholders value, measured in relative units typically. And then we have complexity on board. So there's these 4 types of things at the moment you can estimate. These are our first ones. So how does it work? And I think that's where you bounce forward, Jacob, and share the screen and show us how it works instead of me talking about it.
I'll do that. So, hope that you can see my screen now. I would just give you a very brief tour around the Cool Estimation app, and then we are going to have an estimation session where the whole lot of you can participate if you like. When you open the Cool Estimation app, and when you've been added as user, you have your own space. My space here is called the demo area. And you can create your own estimation. I could do that, but I won't go into much detail with that. give it a title, add the stories or features, epics, call it what you like. But basically, the things that you want to estimate with a title and a description, and set whatever is the first thing I'm going to estimate. As Kurt mentioned, we have currently support for these 4 types, and then pre-add any participants if you like, or just share a link with them. What we're going to go through in just a moment is a number of stories based on different menus for a wedding, and Kurt will go into more detail with that. What I have over here to the left are all my story collections or estimations, and for each of these collections of stories, I have a number of estimation sessions. So for instance, for these stories here, I have estimated both value and effort, and I've also estimated complexity based on the Cynefin framework. I could either, as I've done here, I could add a number of participants, and just like you would do if you create a calendar invite and you add who's gonna be part of this meeting, and you add their emails and send out the email, and they're gonna add it to their calendar as well. So that's one approach to estimating with a group. Add them with their names and their emails, and send a link. And I could send an invite to Kurt, and he will get that email with the link for this specific session, and he can just, whenever he clicks on that link, we know that he is Kurt, and he's now participating in this estimation. I could also just give them a link, and that's as we do in this meeting, and as we've all gotten used to when it comes to online meetings. You just click a link, and if the facilitator lets you join, you are now part of this meeting. So we have both of these ways of facilitating estimation meeting sessions. All of the current ways that we have of estimating right now are, as Kurt said, planning poker based. So no matter if I want to estimate effort, we can do that based on a set of numbers, set of planning poker cards inspired by the Fibonacci series. But also if I estimate Cynefin, the complexity, for each story, we as the people who are participating in this session, we go through and discuss the stories, and vote on whether what do we think the complexity of this story is. How would we classify it? Is it a complicated story to implement, or is it part complicated, part complex? All of this, of course, requires the knowledge of what is Cynefin anyway, and what does it mean to estimate effort and value, and for that part you can either know already, or you can click the help, and we have all these cheat sheets over here for how to use the estimation tool. So there are basically 2 views in Cool Estimation. This overview, which is for the facilitator, the one who's managing this, the one who's writing the stories. You can set up and prepare your stuff for the estimation. And then we have the other view here, which we currently refer to as the session, where we actually do the estimation together with a bunch of people. And that's what we're going to try out in just a second, where you get to click or join by clicking the link, writing your name, and you will then be let in, and we can go through all these stories and try to estimate the values of them. So that was the quick overview of Cool Estimation. Over to you, Kurt.
Okay, just wanted to add that it's, as you've seen here, it's obviously in a browser. When we started the development of this, which we'll get back to at the end, we came in and wanted to develop something that was also available on smartphones and tablets. We're not there yet, but that's where we're heading. First of all, Jacob, is the four of us that are supposed to be, see how many people we are. We are 16. So should we?
I've created 3 rooms, Kurt.
Yeah, 3 rooms. Okay.
Yeah.
So so it'll be Jacob, you, and me, and we will let Paul off the hook this evening. Then, or yeah, you're not too disappointed, Paul. No,
I can join as a participant if you
yeah,
like.
that's fine. So Jacob, let's see the link for the actual.
Yeah, so we are then acting as facilitators. Could you want to present the
case? Yeah.
The case first? So, but basically, the 3 of us are acting as facilitators for 3 different groups of stakeholders, and facilitating 3 sessions. But we're all talking about the same stories. So so you will get a link in each of your breakout rooms.
Yeah.
So here we have the story is about the wedding. So we are now looking at a wedding menu. We collectively here are the stakeholders, the parents and grandparents and the bride and the groom, and we are to determine together looking at the different options for the main course. We would have do the same with the starter and the dessert, but we're looking at the main course here and trying to estimate what would our guests like. What is it how should we choose this menu so that we get the most happiness out of our guests? We always use Mortensen's Hotel in Malmö as our reference, and so there we have this wedding going on, and a Swedish bride, a British groom, mixed of family and friends, wedding style, mambo band, wedding dress, simple but good looking anyway, and so we will now look at what menu should we choose, the main course option, and then we will go in and try and value estimate that. So we have a baseline option, that's salmon, and since we're going to do relative estimation, we call this a 5. And those of you familiar with the estimation is that if you see some of the other menu options, you then compare them to the salmon and say, are they worth more or less? So here's another option. We could have a homemade beef burger for the wedding. So how much value do you think that has for the guests? Here's some chicken curry. Option 2, beef Wellington, beef fillet, risotto and tuna, lobster mac and cheese, beer glazed chicken. These collections of little tidbits, Swedish meatball and gravy, and braised crayfish as the last of the 10 options. So our job is now to go into these sessions and estimate them. So how are we going to get the links, Jakob?
We'll share the links in when we enter the rooms.
Yeah. So you will share.
They're different links.
But you will share the link for your group, for your session.
Right. How do I get in?
You're logged in.
Okay. All right. Let's see what I'm not sure about this. So let's see.
Yeah.
So do you send us into the rooms?
Yep, I'll send you into the rooms, and just to let people know in which room they are, that could be good to know. Balazs, Dragan, Jakob Broberg, Keen Agerup, and Leif Knudsen is in room 1. Jakob Gunge, Nils, Paul, and Peter, and Kurt is in room 2. Priv, Sol, Tom, and Win is in room 3 with me. Okay, I open the rooms now.
This meeting is being recorded.
So hi there.
Hello.
Hello.
So I will let you into the session that I'm hosting. I'll just send you a link here, and if you click that link, you will be able to ask to join, and I will then let you in. So what I'm seeing is, and what I showed you before, is the view of the facilitator who has all the buttons and can do stuff. And what you're seeing is the view of just someone being let in and can vote. So Leif and Keen has joined so far.
Just one question. It asks for a username or email, and how do we get in?
When you click the link?
Yep.
Okay, it should ask it. So
It's just asked me for a name. That's all.
yeah. If you try opening it in incognito view instead, it should just ask for a name, and then you can then I can let you in. But let me know if there's anything that seems to go in a different direction. If you want to recap on the menu, here are the slides.
Now it asks me for, okay, I mean.
So I have let you all in now. And so the four of you are all participating. I'm not participating in the vote. I'm sort of acting as the facilitator. Had this been a team meeting, I might have presented all these stories, and you would be the one who are actually doing the votes. So you're the stakeholders. I'm just facilitating this. As Kurt said before, we have decided that the grilled salmon is the baseline. So I'm going to, right now you can browse through all the stories, have a look at the descriptions, but once I start this session, you will just follow whatever story I'm choosing that we're looking at. So I will start this one, and now looking at the salmon, and we're not going to vote on that, so don't vote. Instead, we're just going to say this is a 5. And what you can also see is that currently Leif and Balazs and Dragan are online. It seems like Keen is has dropped offline. At least it looks like that. You're muted. And but we've decided that the salmon is a 5, and I will move on to the next menu. The homemade beef burger. So had this been a normal estimation session, we would have had a discussion about what does that even mean? What is this? And then every one of you get to have your own vote on, should this be the menu for the wedding? How would you regard it when you're not only looking at yourself, but at all the other guests at the wedding? So we start the voting, and you can then vote first. What is your expected value? What do you expect the value to be? And click the card for the expected. And then next, consider what would the worst case value be if you have to look at it from that angle. And then we can see Balazs has estimated. We don't see his vote yet because we're waiting for the rest of you to vote. So once you all have voted, or I can stop it before if that becomes necessary, we can share our votes, and we can together decide on what should the final resulting estimate be for this. Yeah, try.
One question, just to understand if I got it right. What is the expected vote and what is worst case vote? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, expected for this use case, we're estimating what is the value of this this menu for the wedding. Just gonna let Keen join again if it works. And so that would be how would you consider how valuable this would be compared to a Solomon, which is 5? So do you consider it more valuable, better, or less? And first of all, what would you expect? And then if you think about it again, what is the worst case value? If you sort of think ahead, what could go wrong with this? And based on that, you put your relative estimate compared with the Solomon being a 5.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we're going to stop the voting now. And based on this, we can see all your votes. And Keen, you're having a problem coming in. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's weird.
It says, please wait. The request has been sent.
Okay. Can you try just refreshing and again and see if you can
Sure.
we can get it in. It might be something with the connection. In the meantime, I will act the facilitator on this and go through your votes and say, well, it looks like we have very different opinions on this.
I'm in.
Looks like you're in now.
Yeah, I'm in.
Sorry that you missed the vote on the burger. So Balazs thinks it's an 8, might not only be a 3, and the rest of you sort of think it's a very poor decision. Life even thinks that it would be a reverse feature. It would be better not eating at all, apparently. So based on this, we decide and say, well, it's probably just a 3, maybe a 2. So that's the conclusion that we made. And I, as the facilitator, gets to click on it. And then we progress to the next one, the chicken curry. And we can start voting on this one. And again, you can consider what would you think the expected value of the chicken curry menu would be, comparing again to the Solomon as a 5, taking the consideration of the guests into account. And what would the worst case be? And we can follow how the voting goes on when you guys have voted. So we're just going to vote for the, now everyone has voted, and we're going to share our votes. And again, we can see that it differs a bit. We are more in agreement this time, but we will just say, for the sake of the demonstration here, that we really need to have a round 2 on this. We're now discussing these votes, and it would be better if we take a re-vote. So we're going to resume story voting. So we're going to clear the votes that you have, and you're all going to do a vote again on this instead of jumping to any conclusion. So I'm going to click resume story voting and ask you all to reconsider your vote. And it might not have changed, but just to show you how this would go on in a normal case, if the team or the team of stakeholders that we are in disagreement about this. And then we have all the votes here, and it's more or less the same as before. We can see 3 people have voted on an 8 on this, so let's take that as a conclusion, and then let's decide on a 3, which is in the middle between 2 and 5, for the worst case estimate. Then we're going to talk about the beef Wellington, which is a more traditional dish. and see what you think of that. You as being the stakeholders. Again, first the expected and then the worst case. And in this case, someone really likes it. Sorry, I stopped before you got to click live. That was my mistake. So even this would probably have been a more appropriate use case for having a revote, because apparently Balazs and Dragan, you're representing two different parties in the or groups of people among the wedding guests, because you're really not in agreement about this. But we're going to land on a middle ground here and say, well, since we're going to say it's only a 5 and then a 3 as a worst case. And by doing so, we still have a record of Dragan saying that it should have been a 10. We know that vote was there. It's a part of the log for this, but the consensus vote was set to be here on 5 and 3. And of course, that should be a discussion. Right now, it's just me talking. The beef fillet, again, up for voting, and you can consult the slides if you are in doubt about what sort of menu that is. And again, the votes are not that far away, but still, it's very obvious that this is something that people would like more than just a salmon dish. So we're gonna decide on this. As we've seen before, we also have the option of people who are voting also have the option of declaring that I don't know, this is too big to vote on, or it's just too small. It makes no sense. We've already seen someone use the reverse feature. And it's also an option to declare, might be a bit of a stretch when we're talking about wedding menus, but it's also possible to say, I don't want to give this a relative value. I declare this as a must-have. This is not something that should be discussed. It is something that should just be there. I don't know, as a side dish, French fries for the kids, something like that. Or an exciter. It's not something that we could think of in terms of numerical value, but it's something people are really excited to have in whatever we're discussing. So we're gonna just run very quickly through the rest of them, or whatever, how many we're gonna have time for. So risotto and tuna. And that's a bit different for Balazs. That is a must-have. That's interesting, having that as a must-have. But every man his own taste. Whereas some of you guys are more in the line of this being less than a salmon, or at least not more than a salmon. So I'm sorry about that. We're not going to honor that must-have in the group conclusion.
Sure, I was just testing out.
But alas, you can have it.
Yeah.
All right.
And as we're going to settle on a 3-2 on this one. As you probably noticed, part of this is also saying the worst case must always be less. Had we estimated, we're going to just start the voting on lobster and mac and cheese. Had we estimated effort, a worst case would always be more. Worst case is that there is more work in it than expected, whereas the value is always less. So I'm going to stop voting on this one, and in this case, I think we should go with the middle ground and saying it's a 5. But in this case, I think we should respect Balazs' opinion and say it's in worst case this is a reverse, because if that's the opinion of someone, it might really worst case be a reverse feature or reverse dish, if you could talk about reverse dish. Good. The beer glazed chicken. In this case, we have more people saying we expect it to be a 13, so let's go with that. But again, it might not be that much of a success. And then we have this board of, I can't even pronounce that, but just mixed sorts of stuff, tapas and whatever.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie, thank you. And again, this is something that really divides people, because someone, let's again respect that someone has marked this as a reverse, but it could be, the middle ground here would be 8 compared to these votes, and then a reverse at worst. And then the last two, we have Swedish meatballs. We do have a Swedish bride. That was the premise of this, but I don't know if that's, if you want the IKEA menu for your wedding. Well, some people do. Some people really like the IKEA menu, and I had I participated, which I'm not, I would not have chosen that. But let's again decide on 13. If no, there's a 0 here. Like we're gonna this requires a new vote to see if we can get more in line. And so no reverse votes, and we're gonna settle on an 8 and a 5 on this one. And then the last one is braised crayfish. And that seems to be a must-have for some people. We're going to go with that and try to respect that, maybe as an hors d'oeuvre or something like that. But worst case is somewhere between 13, 3, or 1. We're going to settle with an 8 for that. So that was all the menu options. And we can now, we could have done that before, because it's not required to complete the whole session, but it's now done. And we thank you all for your participation. And you can see all the results here. So this is these are all the summed up results. And as we talked about before, we can both see what were the results that we agreed on, but also what were your individual votes, who voted for must-haves and who voted for reverse features and all that. And once we get back together with the rest of the lot, we can see what they voted and compare those results. So just gonna try to prompt Christian if do you have any questions or comments? Yeah,
I have one regarding our option 9. So when we had to take in revote, what if we have stayed with the same scenario? So meaning one person will vote must have and the other person will vote reverse.
Well, in what you will do in those situations it's not so much decided by the facilitate, or sorry, not so much decided by the tool as the facilitator and what he deems to be the good way of resolving that conflict, if you can say that. So first of all, what we can state is that if you really have stakeholders who are that much in disagreement, there's no real alternative than to talk about it and to try to figure out why are we in so much disagreement about this. And then again, if you can't end up, you can do all the revoting that you want to do, but if you end up just we are in real disagreement over this, well, the best thing I would say is to record that we were in disagreement, this was not unanimously, and try to come up with a compromise. And had we had a real feature in the product or whatever where someone thought it was a must-have and someone thought it was a reverse feature, I would say you need to get back and rewrite that.
Done at 13 and 3. Okay. So we finished in time.
Yeah.
Good. We were just a final comment. We were just discussing what if we really had a disagreement and someone voted a must-have and someone voted it a reverse feature. And what I was trying to conclude with was that if you are in that situation, there is really no alternative than to talk about it. And if that is what you believe, having swiped away all misunderstandings, you probably need to get back to your drawing board and reconfigure this, because you can't work with that.
Yeah.
No, of course, we were doing value estimation here, and a lot of you will have guessed that the one who has the need for this is most of all the product owner. And to be on the effort side, well, it's working with the team, and so on the cost side, the same thing, but with the value, we're talking to different kinds of stakeholders. And of course, it's very important information for the one who's deciding the future of the product. If there's a group of customers that really think this is a must-have, then you've got to make up your mind, are we going to accommodate these customers? In most situations, of course, it's not exactly like deciding on a menu. It is a bit theoretical, this one, I must admit. But if it's a product owner decision, then okay, there are must-haves for someone, and that is something we will have to consider. Do we want to accommodate that kind of customer? If it's a reverse feature for another one, there should probably be an opportunity to disable that feature. Or but in all of these cases, it's a matter of getting a higher understanding.
Yeah, we had some practical problems. So Sol couldn't make it to work on an iPad, and Win couldn't make it work at all. Win, we don't know exactly what was Win's problem, but it seemed Sol's problem was solved by moving over to the PC.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lesson learned is that it is frightfully difficult to agree on a menu.
Yeah.
Should I just show
the mother of the bride?
Yeah.
Kurt, should I just show all the compared results?
Just do that and see, so that people understand that is a part of what it does.
If you could just mark your session as done, then we can see those results as well.
Okay, I will.
Good.
I think it's here now.
Yeah. So we have all the individual results. You can now see that you have all been recorded as participants. Some of you with Paul has joined with his real user and therefore has an email, and some of you have just joined by link. We can go into the details, as you probably saw when you finished, and see the individual votes. You can also see, at least in our group, how much in disagreement we were about some of these, even having some people voting must have and reverse on the same thing. But you can also, we've had 3 different groups of stakeholders now doing all these estimations, and we can sum them all up, not with the individual votes, but we can see them all together here and see how did we how did we score? And in some cases, you can see almost by divine inspiration, we're all in agreement about how we should evaluate the homemade beef burger. Whereas when it comes to some of the other stuff, we are not so much in agreement. And and as you can see here, for instance, the lobster mac and cheese, we evaluated in my group as a 5, worst case of reverse, whereas in Christian's group, they loved it. So you can also get this comparison of how do different groups of stakeholders review this. Now we're all estimating value, but it could easily also have been that we have both estimated value, effort, and complexity for the same set of stories, and you can therefore more compare them in this view and do additional computation of it in Excel if you want to, taking out the results here. And just a second. And working with it over here to do any additional computation. And of course, we also have a whole bunch of ideas of how you can put more overview of your estimation results, and also comparing, for instance, effort and value estimates to get a return on investment estimate for your stories. So that was just to sum up, what can you do when people have voted? You have all the record of how they voted, and you can compare the results.
In a real life situation, as a product owner, maybe you would have one group of people. You wouldn't do it like we did now, doing everything at the same time, of course. But maybe you run a session with managers, and then you had another session with the people that are actually going to use it, and you get different results. So, and that can actually tell you a lot of things. So, and the good thing about having a sort of central tool to do this, not central, but a common tool to do this is all of a sudden you get results that you can compare. It's not like you go out and talk to some people in one way and to other people in another way, and all you have as a result are qualitative meanings and hearsays. You can actually get numbers.
So,
and I think also that if you're the product owner, even if you've got items like this where you get wildly varying results, that in itself tells you something, because if you're trying to construct a backlog for the next sprint and you've got a bunch of things over where there's pretty much broad agreement as to the kind of value that they bring, then you've got a few things where there is not broad agreement. You know, that may give you a clue as to how you might prioritize things for the upcoming session, for example.
Or at least to explore the cohorts. It's very likely that if you have a vocal minority, it might not be worth pursuing.
Right.
One of the ways. I was just going to say, something that's missing here is something that's dealt with in Luke Holman's Buy a Feature game.
By a feature.
Right.
So that's something we should think about adding as another option to the poker cards.
It's interesting. I just want to say it's interesting when customers, stakeholders form alliances based on pooling, hypothetical money, right? How do we band together? How can I get some of what I want? How can you get some of what you want if we pool our money and buy the features?
Sorry, I'm just curious. Right now, you're recording the result of the last vote, and that's probably intentional. I'm curious if there's any value in recording the history of the votes as well, to see how or whether you converged.
Okay.
Or where you started, how your understanding shifted, all of that.
We have that.
I was thinking about the same question that Peter already did. The last 2 years, I've been working with a lot of junior teams. The Scrum Master, product owner, and the team members were equally junior. And what we usually run into that they estimate something about 5, a function, they deliver it, and they just scratching their head that it wasn't really a 5. It was way much higher than that. So we sometimes do a re-estimation, and history records, yes, it was a 5 and it became an 8, and there is a difference in between them. And we are getting better in estimation that those differences are really being cut down in 6 months' time or something like that.
Yeah.
So history records, re-estimating the very same thing after we did that would be a valuable addition.
Yeah, I was thinking about it in the context of the actual estimation, but you bring a very valid point, Balazs, because I didn't think about it in the context of re-estimating after the fact. That is a very valid case that I also face with some of the clients I coach, but I wasn't thinking about it. So good point. I was.
It is a good point.
Yeah, but Peter, I think we do have part of the history at least because we can see what each individual voted and what we recorded as a result.
Yes, but only finally. What I mean
on
is,
if you did several rounds, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's the issue of within one session, several rounds. Does it bring value to record it? And of course, you could have multiple sessions redoing it, and that's a way of getting that history. And that's what. And I have to apologize that we've shot over time. Keen left now, and just we would like to have the opportunity for discussion, which we have right now. We plan to talk some about the technical issues, which not issues, but the way we built it, which I don't think we'll spend time on right now. I just would like to mention to you that it's an experiment for us because this is built in many ways in a novel way. It's built on Google's Flutter, programmed in Dart on the client side, so it's cross-platform. Surprising that we have issues with the iPad, but how come? But the thing is that with this platform, we can, with the same technology stack, deploy to iOS and Android and web and PC and Mac. So that's part of why we as a small company have chosen this stack. On the server side, we also have a very standardized stack that we can easily develop new applications within the package. So next time it might be another kind of application. So it's like you could say it's a micro framework for small, quick and dirty applications here that we've come up with. I would like to hear if there are any further points on it that we didn't make clear. I could see that in our group, of course, we should have prepared a little bit more explaining what the value estimation is, why are there funny cards like fire extinguishers and other things. So again, it took a longer time, but any questions we can help you clarify why we did it and what the concept is. Otherwise, I would, go ahead.
Just pure technically, because I think I figured out what my issue with my browser was. How do I report you guys a bug?
Yeah, there is.
I'm serious. I can just send you a screenshot of what happened. So
if you are in the application, there is a feedback up in the menu in the top left corner. There is submit feedback.
Please do that. Yeah.
All right, I'll find it, I think.
Yeah. In the left, there is a drawer, and you can show it out.
I suppose you also need to fix the bug in the system that meatballs didn't win.
Yeah.
So
they did in my group, I think. So
yeah. Was there something wrong with the meatballs?
No, there's something wrong with the system because meatballs would win, obviously. Come on. Have you not tested your stuff already?
There also seemed to be some kind of anti-Indian food movement going.
Yeah.
Okay. One question just regarding the feedback that you mentioned. Is it that you meant in this application, or Where?
Yeah, in the application. Otherwise, can you write the email address in the chat, Jacob?
Yeah, I could do that. If you
You say something? Or
sorry, yeah. If you write to support@AgileLeanHouse.com, you can submit your feedback either that way. I just noticed that probably we need to put, there is a missing part where we don't have that submit feedback button, and then we will add that in the tool as well. But if you have any feedback, then please, very please, write us. Yeah.
We are now, this is like a minimal viable product. It's not a proper release yet, but for those who would like to try it out more, we will give you an account. You can try it and experiment with it. I would like to just quickly show what it is that that we hope to get people involved in. Jakob had that question early on as well. So with that in mind, let me just show you this screen again. So what are we asking for here? Well, we're asking for people to use it and promote it, obviously, help us get it out there and used in real life. And the next step is participating in creating the best product. We have, of course, a list of features and applications we would like to implement, but we may, of course, not be correct in that. Help us decide the best way of spend our scarce resources if you want to participate and like to be involved in making a better tool out of this. We are also planning, and we are currently investigating if there's an interest in having a sort of co-ownership of this application, where people could join for a fee and get a percentage of the revenue, and obviously influence on the ideas, etc. For those that are, we will contact you again with more details on this if you'd like to discuss that. And the other thing is also the technology platform that we have considered might be useful for other smaller startups who have, as I said, the ideas for little quick and dirty applications, but getting them up and running in the cloud these days is not, I mean, there's a lot of things you have to get in place. One of the things we have here is we have a single sign-on to all of these things, and you can also in the future log in with your Google account, etc., so that is solved. And there's a huge barrier for small software companies these days to get up in the cloud in a professional way. And maybe this is a way forward. We don't know whether it's interesting, but we think we've found a nice combination of technologies that could help a lot of small organizations. We have a lot of things we would like to do. The minimal viable product is what we have here. Version 1 that we currently think sort of the main epics in that is that we would enabling the methods to be used as polls. So it's not a meeting, but you can actually ask your stakeholders to go in and vote at any time they want. And so it takes a different approach to that. That's more like taking a survey, but using it as a poll, using numbers as opposed to cards. So typing in numbers for whatever you are estimating. A full configuration of the planning poker, including the user can specify what cards he wants to use and what should be on them. So you could estimate all kinds of other things if the user can create his own. Magic estimation, that's sort of the other way around, where you lay out all the cards and you drag and drop your stories onto the cards and say, I think this one is a 50, this is a 5, this is an 8, etc. And then what Tom said, the poker chip estimation by a feature, which you can either do with like poker chips, or you can have monopoly money or other things that you use for that approach. And we have confidence interval and variations, and then Android and iOS versions that we thinking. Version 1.1, we would integrate it with our own main product, Agemba, story containers and people, white results back. So you could, instead of copy pasting a set of stories into the cool estimation, obviously you could just hook it up to either a sprint or another container on the system. And there you have your stories. And the same with people. You don't have to register them again, for example, the team members. I guess people like stakeholders pretty much wouldn't probably be the same, that you would hand them a link like we did this evening. And we have the idea for Jira and Azure DevOps to do the same, so that we directly can hook this one up to the two major players. And I won't talk through all the other ones. You get the PDF here, but what we want what we would like to, in order to go back here, is to have some people that are interested in discussing these backlogs, the pros and the cons, and the values of why is this interesting in order for to reach the market. So we shot over a quarter of an hour here, and then we'll definitely keep hanging around. And if there are more questions and discussions, please feel free to do so. But I think we should end here, Jakob, instead of keep throwing slides at people. So
good luck with the Swedish meatballs, Leif.
Thank you for a nice session. I have to leave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating.
Bye, guys.
Win, are you still there?
Yeah. Okay.
So I did send Win a note in the chat, but if you need